Good evening. It's a Sunday, October 22nd, 23rd, something like that. Very close to my 38th birthday. And I'm starting this tape without script or without any real organization of what I want to say. But I do feel I need to explain. What I want is an off-the-shelf.
To visualize this story, but today we have pictures that will probably leave many people with an everlasting image of the horror that occurred at the end of this road. These are some of the bone fragments that have been found, and investigators say there are countless fragments just like those scattered over a third of an acre here. The California Conservation Corps has been recruited to pick up the bones. Most of them worked on their hands and knees, raking the ground with their fingers. Investigators came up with 10 pounds of bones. The local coroner says 5 bodies have been found here so far. The Calaveras County Sheriff once told me, though, he believes there are as many as 20 victims, though, buried on the property.
On a hazy Sunday morning in June of 1985, police received what seemed to be a routine call pertaining to a shoplifting incident at a lumber store in South San Francisco. Someone spotted Charles attempting to leave the store in possession of an expensive vice grip without any intention of paying for it. The last thing that would cross anyone's mind at the time, however, is that its intended purpose was more nefarious than anything that they could dream up, even in their wildest of imaginations. Unfortunately for so many people, this is not a dream. The man they had crossed paths with was, in fact, a walking nightmare, and his name was Charles Ng. And yet, still, somehow, that's not even the half of it. The courageous employees and customers that chose to get involved on that day would soon find out, as with the entire world, that a butterfly effect of both life-saving and life-ending proportions had already been set in motion. The moments that ensued would mark the end of a 2-year reign of merciless cruelty and terror, all at the hands of 2 star-crossed cowardly individuals who, in spite of contrasting levels of maturity, found in one another a fatal attraction that exponentially amplified the courage they often failed to muster individually.
It's a Sunday, October. So cold, so quiet, so totally removed from the world that I can quickly condition. It's a Sunday, October.
Watching those scenes, something I can be. Watching those scenes, something I can be.
Leonard Thomas Lake was born on October 29, 1945, at St. Francis's Hospital in San Francisco, California. At this time, it was said that a palpable warm glow was present in the air for military families, as weary veterans were returning home from World War II. In this context, Navy sailor Elgin Lake and his wife Gloria should have been overjoyed to bring a child into booming economic conditions and a newfound sense of world peace. Come to think of it, things should have been perfect. But it didn't work out that way. As the collective euphoria from Elgin's return subsided, the long-term effects of war began to take their toll on him. He then turned to alcohol for solace over the next few years. Then, in 1950, amidst the backdrop of a marriage that was crumbling from the inside out, Gloria delivered a daughter named Sylvia. And then, just 1 year later in 1951, Leonard's brother Donald was born. Shortly after this time, however, Elgin Lake announced that he had had enough of the marital discord between he and Gloria. He then left for Seattle, leaving his family behind. A few months later, with Leonard already enrolled in kindergarten, Gloria decided to follow Elgin and move in an attempt to repair their marriage. Interestingly enough, we later come to find out that Sylvia, Leonard's sister, would later report that Gloria had given Leonard a choice in the matter at this time. Sylvia vaguely recalled that Leonard's initial response was to stay. However, he would change his mind just before they departed for Seattle at the train station. In spite of his sobbing plea, clinging to his mother's skirt, Gloria ordered Leonard to stay with his grandparents in San Francisco. Leonard Lake would never again live with either of his parents. It is widely theorized that this experience permanently scarred Leonard, and is perhaps the catalyst for this version of Leonard that I present to you today.
It's a Sunday in October. Whenever and however I want.
Though life with his grandmother would prove more financially stable, what lay beneath the glossy veneer was, at best, neglectful, and could perhaps be more accurately described as sinister. Instead of serving dutifully as his guiding light, and the one who could ensure a change of trajectory for Leonard, she would prove to be the opposite, one who would eventually aid in sealing his fate. Further adding to his trauma, Gloria, Sylvia, and Donald would eventually find themselves back in San Francisco after having stayed with Elgin for just a short time. One would think this would have provided a natural segue for Leonard to be reunited with his immediate family. However, unbelievably once more, this was not the case. While Leonard would remain financially taken care of with his grandparents in middle-class Glen Park neighborhood, mere occasional visits with Donald, Sylvia, and his struggling mother, who lived roughly 30 minutes away, would have to suffice. Maybe that was for the best, though, in the context of what I'm about to tell you next. Throughout the course of the next couple of years, under his grandmother's supervision, with Leonard still at a very early age, he went on to develop an interest in adult movies. This interest eventually developed into a full-blown addiction, whereby he was not content to be a mere consumer of these productions, but a producer of them as well. Around the same time, Leonard developed a deep and troubling interest in photography. This is because we later become aware that, during this time, Leonard was reported to have taken, at the very least, highly inappropriate pictures of his sister. Though Leonard's parents play a huge role in shaping his eventual character, inevitably much of the blame has to be placed on his grandmother. We later become aware that not only did she turn a blind eye to this, she actively encouraged it as well. Add this to Leonard's pre-existing abandonment issues, mounting parental resentment, and a growing list of nefarious hobbies, Leonard begins to live a depraved life seemingly free of consequences. Gasoline meet fire indeed. In 1956, Leonard's mother Gloria would remarry again, and the couple would eventually go on to have 2 children of their own, 2 girls who they named Janet and Patty. Leonard now finds himself even more a full-on outsider with a full-blooded brother and sister, and now 2 half-sisters who were taken care of by Gloria and her new husband. Leonard would actually spend the next few years simply getting out of the house whenever possible, attending summer camps, mountain hikes, and taking swim lessons. This perhaps showed that Leonard did possess some level of higher perspective, or at least an interest in striving towards this, as this decision to put some distance between he and his more sedentary tendencies was one of the more wise decisions we see him make. At the age of 14, Leonard's then 9-year-old brother Donald is tragically struck by a train. He is fortunate to survive the incident. However, he must now cope with the massive brain damage that he suffered during this horrible event. We would later become aware that Leonard was not the least bit supportive or helpful towards Donald at this time. Unfortunately, this was not simply a passing trend. This was, for all intents and purposes, a glimpse into their very dark future.